Hello dear viewers, here is a new video that I will please you on my channel Manhwa Compilation. I hope you like my story and how I told it to you. A sudden catastrophe unfolded when an unforeseen event transpired. A gateway to another dimension swung open, allowing ferocious creatures to infiltrate human territory. Yet, on the brink of human annihilation, an extraordinary event unfolded, aided by the influence of the constellation. Had it not been for individuals who received celestial assistance during their confrontations with these interdimensional monsters, the very existence of humanity would have been at stake. It's important to note that not all constellations were benevolent. There existed malevolent constellations that exploited humans as tools and discarded them once their objectives were achieved in subsequent lives. The swordsman Jong-woon would later strike a pact with another nefarious constellation. This decision was prompted by a discrepancy in the expedition team's report, which failed to mention the presence of poisonous gas. Initially, the protagonist had mistaken the cave's atmosphere for mere fog, leading to persistent concerns about his own survival. Although he held an F-level status as a player, his determination was unwavering in safeguarding this world. Little did he foresee the dire circumstances he would soon find himself in. Regardless of the circumstances, he understood that swordsman Jong-woon would not come to his rescue. To his dismay, he was apprised that swordsman Jong-woon had employed sarcasm, suggesting that F-rank individuals should meet their demise. This incident led to a heated confrontation, further fueling his desire to confront the odds. As he began to lose consciousness, he heard a mysterious voice inquiring if he desired a rebirth. His affirmative response transported him back to the day of his awakening when he established a pact with a new constellation. What he hadn't anticipated was the unique role this novel constellation would play in his life, a maternal figure. Sung Yun-suk harbored ambitious plans to elevate her son from an F-level player to an S-level one. However, her son remained skeptical, questioning the feasibility of such a challenging task. She promptly instructed her son to cease his inquiries and commence preparations. To his astonishment, he was assigned the task of house cleaning, prompting him to wonder about the drastic change in his mother's demeanor. Sung Yun-suk took pride in her recognition as a figure in the Hall of Fame, and even boasted to her son about her superior progress compared to his father. Both of parents had held S-level status as players, and sacrificed their lives to save the world, making them eligible to become constellations. As a sign of gratitude for completing the initial task, the mother sought to sponsor her son. She presented him with a potent vitamin pill to enhance his strength, which he consumed despite his reservations. Shortly thereafter, the house collapsed into a pile of rubble, evoking memories of a previous house collapse following his awakening. As he rushed outside to investigate, he spotted the sinister monsters responsible for the previous catastrophe. Grateful for having survived the earlier encounter, he decided to observe from a distance rather than recklessly engage them in battle. Nonetheless, his mother, Sung Yun-suk, stood by his side, encouraging him to confront his fears and engage in combat. Despite his initial apprehension, he reluctantly launched an attack on a rock. To his astonishment, the rock quickly shattered into small fragments. Sung Yun-suk attributed this feat to the potency of the vitamin pill, marking the successful initiation of her plan to elevate her son to S-level status. Empowered by newfound strength, he promptly rushed to the aid of those imperiled by the interdimensional invaders. Sung Yun-suk took immense pride in her son's heroics, offering him guidance on how to harness his newfound abilities. With newfound confidence, he commanded the monsters to confront him, ultimately clashing with their formidable leader. He vowed to make the creature pay a steep price for its destruction of their cherished haven. After a fierce battle, Sung Yun-suk joyfully informed her son that he had triumphantly completed his task. At this juncture, he had regained his composure, doubting his role in the defeat of the monsters sprawled on the ground. Onlookers gathered to congratulate him, unaware of the incredible player hidden within their midst. Several individuals recorded the battle on their phones, captivated by their first glimpse of the young hero. As he stood in the spotlight, the protagonist contemplated the sensation of being the center of attention, an exhilarating experience. His mother beamed with pride at her son's achievements. Eager to learn more about the vitamin tablet he had consumed, he inquired about its origin. It was revealed to be a capsule crafted from the powder of a 1,000-year-old ginseng root, cultivated in the mountains near the Hall of Fame. This remarkable supplement not only extended the lifespan, but also augmented internal strength, quadrupling all indicators. He marveled at the fact that he had previously encountered this root only in books, and asserted that among all the mothers in the world, Only Sung Yun-suk had provided her son with a 10,000-year-old ginseng. Upon inspecting his tool panel, he discovered that his original stats were now equivalent to those of a brand new S-rank martial artist. At that moment, a car arrived, drawing the attention of the assembled crowd. It was the guild responsible for the village's safety. However, puzzled villagers questioned their purpose. The man who emerged from the car appeared disconcerted by the scene unfolding before him. Meanwhile, villagers reproached the defeated monsters. The man approached the protagonist, questioning his understanding of player rules. Jae-min, grinning, explained that he had done what the man should have done and suggested that it was the man who should express gratitude. Recognizing the man's reluctance to offer thanks, Jae-min advised him to simply return home and leave the rest to him. Jae-min also mentioned that, as a recently awakened player, he was without a guild at the moment. The man regarded Jae-min as a promising rookie, producing a business card from his pocket and offering it. He expressed regret for his earlier greed and sought to apologize to Jae-min. Amused by the rapid shift in the man's demeanor, Jae-min tore the business card from his grasp, provoking the man's anger. Sung Young-suk and her son faced a new challenge, lacking magical gold. To address this, Sung Young-suk decided to seek assistance from nearby constellations. A striking young woman arrived, expressing her gratitude to Jae-min for his heroic actions in saving the village. As the girl said goodbye, Jae-min instantly felt comfortable with her, but he couldn't remember her right away. The girl left her contact information before departing. From the document, Jae-min realized that he felt a sense of familiarity with that girl because she was the infamous Lee Ji-yoon, and in a year, she planned to eliminate all the guild members. Jae-min couldn't comprehend how such a charming girl had transformed into a demon, but the Catholics arrived before he could contemplate it further. The two Catholic representatives requested to see the player registration card. But Jae-min was the only one who had recently awakened. They both inspected the number of monsters in the area, doubting his assertion. It seemed absurd that Jae-min had just awakened and had already defeated over 10 orcs. Consequently, they intended to apprehend Jae-min, given the rising crime rate among unregistered awakeners. There was no alternative, so Jae-min had to reach out to his uncle, who also held the position of the Catholic organization's president. After making the call from his workplace, Jae-min's uncle severely scolded him for his impulsive behavior and questioned why someone who had just awakened would even consider engaging with a D-level elf. The uncle asserted that if Sung Young-suk were still here, she would undoubtedly chastise him for being reckless. The secretary seated nearby cautioned him that expressing anger would affect his hair, but this remark only fueled his irritation. He had explicitly warned everyone not to mention his hair, and Sung Yun-suk joined in the laughter, noting that his uncle's hair was even thinner than before. She couldn't resist teasing him and promised to find him hair growth products. Jae-min couldn't help but become a bit emotional as he recollected the time his mother entrusted him to his uncle, Lee Tai-ho. Little did he know that his mother's friend would eventually assume the role of his guardian. Curious about Jae-min's current path, Tai-ho inquired, although he would likely not believe it if Jae-min mentioned his mother's random choice. Regardless, Lee Tai-ho affirmed that Jae-min was truly Sung Yun-suk's son, who had ultimately become a player, even though Tai-ho had initially hoped Jae-min would lead an ordinary life. At present, Jae-min required a corporation-issued permit to access the gate. However, he suspected that Tai-ho would attempt to stop him, just as before. Hence, Jae-min believed he could not allow that to occur. He assured his uncle that he comprehended his concerns and proposed a solution, testing him through a corporate training program known as the Virtual Battlefield Assistant. The secretary who was standing nearby also considered this idea acceptable. Tai-ho hadn't expected that not only his nephew, but even his trusted assistant supported the idea. Reluctantly, Lee Tai-ho advised Jae-min not to lose his temper in the future and agreed to Jae-min's proposal. He would allow Jae-min to become a player if he passed this challenge. Observers from the outside were impressed by Jae-min's ability, speculating that he must be at least at an A level. Even though Tai-ho was reluctant to accept it, Jae-min's swordsmanship and his habit of breathing loudly in a specific rhythm reminded him of Sung Yun-suk. Nonetheless, Lee Tai-ho quickly dismissed such thoughts, convincing himself that it couldn't be the case. Sung Young-suk had sacrificed herself to prevent the world's destruction when Jae-min was just 10 years old, so in Tai-ho's opinion, Jae-min's current talent was undeniably exceptional. Jae-min reached out to his uncle and explained that his attempt at combat had only earned him approval. He then requested 5 more rounds of testing, with Taeho's assurance of continued support until the 10th round. Jaemin also stipulated that if he succeeded, Taeho would need to provide him with lifetime equipment. Lee Taeho considered it unusual for someone who had just awakened to exhibit such skills. He recognized that Jaemin would likely become famous, but talent alone did not guarantee survival. Taeho could not allow Jaemin to participate in a brutal arena filled with monsters capable of destroying a tank with a single breath. Jaemin anxiously awaited his uncle's response, realizing it would take some time. After further discussions with everyone, Lee Taeho consented to Jaemin's request, with additional conditions to be imposed if Jaemin defeated the forthcoming arena monsters. His uncle agreed to all of Jaemin's demands. Taeho inquired about Jaemin's preferred equipment, privately noting that such opportunities were typically reserved for A-level players. However, Jaemin preferred that his uncle depart first so he could make his own equipment selection. Nevertheless, his uncle disagreed, insisting that he accompany him. Lee Taeho also promised to provide Jaemin with excellent equipment recommendations. The equipment room staff were astonished when Taeho arrived, and he asked them to bring out the VIP gear. He then enthusiastically instructed Jaemin to disregard these items and lead him to a confidential location. Nevertheless, Sung Young-suk cautioned her son not to place too much trust in the balding old man, and to consider the equipment she had available. Jaemin felt that these two individuals were speaking too loudly in his ear. He had not forgotten the strong envy he had felt toward Lee Chan-yuk in his previous life. Lee Chan-yuk had been fortunate to possess that sword, which had transformed his life, even though it had been severely damaged. Jaemin believed that no matter what happened, he would soon ascend to the A-level with this sword. Jaemin stepped through the portal, and the other players swiftly followed suit. Once inside, a chorus of protests erupted as they directed their anger at the captain for coercing them. One player expressed fear, believing they might not survive after witnessing their ominous surroundings, which unmistakably resembled a dungeon. Jaemin cast a sympathetic glance at the distressed group. When they noticed Jaemin in the distance, their frustration boiled over, and they clamored for his demise, claiming it was unjust that they had endured so much hardship. A physically imposing man inquired about Jaemin's quest to find his mother, recognizing the urgency of the situation as they faced potential death. Just as he finished speaking, a horde of dragon corpses approached, confirming Jaemin's expectations. The ensuing dragon roars sent everyone present clutching their ears in agony, a unique and bone-chilling sound that could deter even the bravest of foes. While the others regretted their impulsive decision to enter, Jaemin remained unfazed. With determination, he drew his sword and confronted the dragon remains, swiftly establishing dominance as their leader. In essence, the dragon remains became his loyal minions. Jaemin wasted no time ordering the remains to engage the hostile players who had threatened him. Witnessing their demise, Sung Yoon-suk seethed with anger, unable to forget Jaemin's prior actions. She promptly dispatched a system-controlled nanny, which would arrive in precisely 11 hours and 59 seconds. Unaware of the nanny's identity, Jaemin prioritized cleansing the dungeon. Within minutes, thanks to the assistance of the dragon remains, he located a striking dragon statue. Jaemin plunged his sword into the statue, sensing an imminent transformation. Meanwhile, the teammates of the prior group arrived at the gate, perplexed by the demise of their companions. After venting their frustration on the captain, they turned their attention to arresting Jaemin. Remaining motionless before Fafnir's tomb, Jaemin repeated Lee Chan-yuk's earlier words, reflecting on the discomfort of his situation. Nevertheless, he recognized the significance of his quest and proceeded to uncover the holy sword, chosen by this location as its king. He resolved to claim it. On the other side, as Jaemin neared completion and initiated the countdown, the second group arrived, discovering the skeleton. Their leader, after cursing the captain, ordered Jaemin's arrest. Still, Jaemin maintained his resolve. Suddenly, he received a notification. The Lake of Death had revealed the royal decree status, promising a worthy reward to the possessor. Though unfamiliar with the Lake of Death, Jaemin understood the sword's importance and seized it as the rightful king. As the other group ventured inside and confronted the skeleton, chaos ensued. On one side, Jaemin's anticipation grew, while on the other, a battle was brewing. As the situation escalated, Fafnir's tomb was discovered, awakening the furious dragon Fafnir. Confronted by angry intruders, Jaemin questioned their motives. He was informed that the Lake of Death had been restarted, sparking his immense relief. Seeing Jamin's nonchalant demeanor, the other group grew even more irate. They demanded an explanation, unaware of the impending confrontation with the territorial monster. As the monster emerged, it vehemently protested the intrusion, declaring that humans had no right to disturb its tomb. Initially intimidated, Jaemin regained his composure with Sung Yun-suk's support, urging the group to wait for him while he found an escape route. The monster grew increasingly agitated upon spotting the sword in Jaemin's possession. It couldn't comprehend why an object imbued with its own soul power was wielded by this outsider, Jaemin. The monster declared that it wouldn't allow its body to fall into Jaemin's hands. Undaunted, Jaemin bravely withstood the monster's attacks, mentally urging himself to endure further. Gradually, things took a turn for the better when the dragon remains came to Jaemin's aid, recognizing him as their rightful king. Observing the situation, Jaemin urged those standing outside to assist the dragon remains. His long-awaited moment had arrived, and the metabolism process initiated. Enraged, the monster demanded to know why Jaemin had initiated the exchange. Jaemin responded that it was too late. The metabolism had already commenced. In a sudden twist, Jaemin's sword vanished from his hand, replaced by a bag bathed in blue light. Bewildered, Jaemin wondered about his sword, Saint, and the contents of this mysterious bag. Frustrated and feeling lucky, the monster expressed its astonishment that the death pit had chosen Jaemin, considering him the most potent weapon it had ever desired. Jaemin, however, regarded it as a mere bag. With the situation becoming increasingly perilous, the group questioned Jaemin's judgment. Having just arrived, they realized that staying any longer meant certain death. Excitedly, they inquired about an escape plan, and Jaemin confidently assured them he had a solution. He urged them to trust him and introduced his mother's help item. As the people surrounding him speculated, a teleportation stone designed for one person activated. Despite their exclamations, Jaemin vanished before their eyes. Outside the gate, the remaining group of players was taken aback. Their captain rushed forward, demanding to know the whereabouts of his troops. Simultaneously, Pandora's bag in Jaemin's possession activated, summoning various weapons based on the surroundings. The following morning, news circulated of an unidentified player single-handedly defeating the orc horde. Jaemin's phone buzzed incessantly with guild invitations. Watching her son mature, Sung Yun-suk felt happiness welling up within her. The television broadcasted images of a congregation still missing members, evoking Jaemin's sympathy. Remembering the previous night's conflict, he resolved to become stronger, determined not to return to his previous F-level life. He revealed the existence of Pandora's box, a potent item hidden from the public, emphasizing its power. Upon leaving the house, Jaemin encountered a large group of people, surprising him. Undeterred, he announced that he would never accept their presence. Jaemin readily accepted any guild that approached him, becoming a part of various groups. His second venture into the virtual battlefield was aimed at assessing his strength. Utilizing his newfound power, he efficiently conquered the challenge and achieved a B ranking. By this time, there was widespread chaos among those outside the game. Upon stepping out of the game, Jaemin was approached by Jisoo Seo, who urged him to join their cause in serving the nation. Without hesitation, Jisoo Seo resorted to using a possession curse to take control of Jaemin's soul. Fortunately, Jaemin's nanny arrived in the nick of time, clarifying that her sole responsibility during his mother's absence was to look after him. She hoped they would get along, but her primary message was that Jaemin needed to join the council. Jaemin dismissed the numerous guilds trying to persuade him, and instead turned to a man who had been relatively quiet. He made his choice of guild after noticing that the man had said little but seemed to exude confidence. Jaemin secretly suspected that the man already knew who G1 was when he introduced himself as the Black Tiger Hunter and continued to pay close attention. G1 emphasized that although his guild was smaller and faced challenges meeting the requirements of larger associations, he would provide Jaemin with the best possible therapist. Jaemin understood that the man had spoken at length to provide reassurance. However, Jaemin remained resolute in his decision and wanted the matter to be put to rest. His nanny congratulated him for making a wise choice, awarding him 15 reward points with more to come. She cautioned him to be disciplined, even as G1 suddenly hit the brakes due to an explosion caused by monsters escaping a collapsing basement. Jaemin, filled with dread, faced a two-headed goblin emerging from the gate, a sea-level danger monster. He knew that tackling it wouldn't be easy, considering it was a sea raid monster, but Jamin believed that defeating it now would reduce his responsibility for other players' lives. Drawing upon his knowledge from his previous life in Pandora's box, Jamin astonished many by successfully defeating the monster. His nanny praised Jamin for his composure, while Sung Yun-suk engaged in a raid of wild monsters. Although abrupt, his nanny had to leave. Before departing, she promised him an additional 20 bonus points if he checked the status window. She would wait until then, reminding Jamin to take care of himself as his mother had advised. After his nanny left, Jamin acquired a new skill, allowing him to inherit his mother's abilities. An extraordinary skill that maximized his potential and enabled him to wield any weapon effectively. Jamin now felt like an all-powerful player capable of excelling in both support and damage roles. Reflecting on his progress, he realized he had achieved in 2 days what would typically take more than 3 years. Sung Yun-suk was astonished and questioned her son's previous weakness. Jamin looked at his mother with a pained expression. In his eyes, the black tiger represented a lifeline. He had endured great suffering in his previous life, particularly at the hands of the sword god of the Middle Highlands, with only G1 providing encouragement and support, even as a scrapper. G1 had stood by him until the end. At this point, Jamin encountered Park Cheon-soo, the shameless man he had to sign a contract with. When Cheon-soo spotted Jamin approaching, he greeted him with enthusiasm. Although Jamin held contempt for Cheon-soo, he forced a smile and shook hands, despite considering him the most despicable individual. Merely thinking about Cheon-soo's past actions made Jamin grit his teeth uncontrollably. Sung Yun-suk had initially disapproved of Jamin due to his status as the son of an S-level couple, but without significant power. However, after learning about the incident, she became furious and asked if her son could eliminate Cheon-soo immediately. Jamin looked at Cheon-soo and expressed his desire to take the admission exam, not expecting Cheon-soo to announce his own participation. Jamin pondered if this might be an advantageous opportunity. Cheon-soo used those who joined him as bait for the monster, and wanted Jamin to wait until the creature fell asleep to obtain a magical stone. In a fit of rage, Jamin struck Cheon-soo, who had intended to help him, but had actually caused problems. Jamin then instructed Cheon-soo that if he didn't want further harm, he should rise and break the rocks as quickly as possible. Jamin hadn't anticipated Cheon-soo passing out upon hitting the ground, but Sung Yun-suk advised him to focus on rescuing the staff trapped inside the monster prey. Jamin approached the stone wall and warned everyone to clear out before breaking the inner wall to free them. With urgency, Jamin instructed everyone to evacuate and leave the monster to him. He summoned Pandora's box, unveiling the most potent weapon capable of defeating the approaching menace. Holding a lance, Jamin sinisterly declared it the ideal weapon for confronting the menacing monster. Onlookers were astounded by Jamin's prowess in battling the creature. Cheon-soo, upon awakening, unleashed furious curses toward Jamin. However, the rest of the staff glared at Cheon-soo, well aware that as the director, he intended to flee and sacrifice them. Despite their efforts to stop him, Cheon-soo remained fixated on killing Jamin. Fortunately, Jamin managed to evade the punch, which landed squarely on the monster's face. Consequently, the monster redirected its attention to Cheon-soo. Sung Yun-suk reminded her son of the monster's weakness at the back of its skull. Jamin ultimately emerged victorious, and Cheon-soo met his demise. However, Jamin couldn't shake his feeling of dissatisfaction, which he later discussed with his mother. Upon returning to the council, the news of the director's demise was met with visible relief among the members. Thanks to Jamin's recommendation, G1 was appointed as the new director, given his years of dedication witnessed by everyone at the convention. G1 was taken aback by this development, wondering how he could assume the director's role. Jamin made it clear that he would remain in the guild if Jawan became the director, recognizing Jawan as the team's last hope. When Jamin noticed that G1 was still contemplating it, he inquired of Jawan, who would oversee the staff if the association disbanded? Eventually, G1 agreed, despite his numerous flaws, expressing a willingness to embrace criticism for self-improvement. Jamin silently acknowledged that everything was proceeding as planned. Consequently, everyone renewed their contracts, with Jamin revising the terms in his favor. Jamin's subsequent target became Yusayung Soo, destined to become renowned as the standout player. responsible for transforming Jaemin's second life into a utopia. 8 days later, Jaemin initiated his plan. He intended to hire 2 actors to simulate a confrontation with Seong-soo, with the intention of stepping in to rescue the apparent victim. The strategy proved effective, leading to a rendezvous at a nearby cafe. Seong-soo bashfully admitted to watching Jaemin's fight video over 10 times. Sung Yun-suk, in high spirits, complimented Seong-soo's ability to assess people. Seong-soo, in embarrassment, revealed that he had recently awakened and held only an F-level status. He had mistakenly believed that an awakening would guarantee a carefree life, but the skill information remained locked, granting him only the ability to perceive everyone's head count. Jaemin understood that this head count was his preferred parameter, unique in the world. Seong-soo specified that he could only discern it in individuals with false awakenings, not in ordinary people. Jaemin concluded that this distinction might hold the key to unlocking Seong-soo's latent abilities. His objective in approaching Seong-soo was to boost that head count number. Jaemin kept his promise and took Seong-soo to a monster hunting dungeon. Observing Jaemin's combat prowess, he secretly marveled at how incomparable it was to the videos he had watched. Seong-soo noted that this was the first time he had seen a monster dispatched with a single strike, leaving him in awe of what Jaemin might achieve at S rank. The goblin's core was their heart, and Jaemin instructed Seong-soo to focus on that before handing him a blade. When Jaemin noticed Seong-soo hesitating, he questioned whether he intended to stand by idly and watch others, missing out on opportunities. Once they secured the goblin's core, Jaemin promptly handed it over to Seong-soo, stating that he only wished to deliver it to him, allowing them to negotiate further. Jaemin's primary aim was to draw closer to Seong-soo and discover his current head count number. Upon exiting the dungeon, Jaemin even eagerly provided Seong-soo with a ride to the main road, promising further contact and advising him to drive home safely. Seong-soo had invested considerable effort, but had earned just over 200 points. Jaemin privately believed that he needed to find a way to accumulate 700 points. With the assistance of Sung Yun-suk, Jaemin discreetly tailed Seong-soo, aiming to enhance his appeal. He desired to learn more about Seong-soo. Unexpectedly, Jaemin discovered that Seong-soo had not returned home late at night, but had instead headed to the hospital. After following Seong-soo inside, Jaemin observed a sick individual whom Seong-soo identified as his mother. Sung Yun-suk expressed sympathy for this pitiable individual, considering light-colored hair and pale skin an incurable ailment when an ordinary person was exposed to mana. Seong-soo sat on the hospital bed, recounting the day's events to his mother, who, if everything had gone according to plan, would not have survived for a year. Jaemin realized there was still hope since Seong-soo's mother was still alive. Mother handed Jaemin a ticket to the heavenly realm upon learning of her son's desire to save her. The saint informed Jaemin that the route to her residence would become accessible once he tore up the ticket. Subsequently, Jaemin found himself in a different dimension, surrounded by a multitude of books. A mysterious figure instructed him to view the books as adversaries rather than literary works. Among these books, Jaemin discovered 5 containing instructions for creating purifying water. Reading every page was unnecessary. Tearing them up or burning them would suffice. Jaemin pondered the simplicity of this task but wondered where to locate the 5 books. Given the imposed deadline, Jaemin paused, inquiring if it was acceptable to tear or burn the books. He then opened Pandora's box, expecting the summoning of a potent weapon. To his surprise, Jaemin produced a flamethrower. Even the holy maiden was astonished, and questioned whether he intended to burn all the books. Jaemin reminded her that she had given him permission to do anything, making this weapon invaluable for his mission. He began to destroy the books with his flamethrower, completing the task far more swiftly than anticipated, likely not requiring the allotted 15 minutes. Having perused one of the books he had recovered, Jaemin received the recipe for purifying water from the holy maiden, a remedy effective for all living beings. Judging by its name, Jaemin assumed it must have had a medicinal scent. He noted that the ingredients were commonplace, but the final component required was the soul core. Jaemin realized that soul cores had only been discovered in the past 3 years. Fortunately, he had learned how to collect them before returning to this time period, which he achieved by revisiting the dungeon. Sung Yun-suk, filled with apprehension, questioned her son about his acquisition of the soul core. Jaemin admitted that it was challenging to explain, but implored his mother to trust him. Jaemin returned to the dungeon using his mother's weapon, unexpectedly assuming her form. The system then emerged, informing him that he would henceforth complete assignments by incarnating into the contracted body, with access to all his mother's skills. Jaemin had not yet grown accustomed to this method of entering the dungeon, despite dismissing the idea that he now needed to clear out this dungeon first. Nobody understood the significance of his mother's greatest day better than he did, because it was also the day his parents left him in the midst of the apocalypse, an event that would mark the realm of heroes. Jaemin initiated his battle with the monsters, astonished by his mother's formidable strength. Her abundant mana and energy had earned her the moniker God of War for good reason. As Jaemin examined her abilities, he realized that the numerical data was no longer within the realm of human capabilities. While Jaemin contemplated this, a monster suddenly attacked, leaving him with little time to react. When his father had already dismantled it right before him, Jaemin suddenly addressed him as father, momentarily forgetting that he was in his mother's guise. Consequently, Jaemin's father approached his wife to inquire about her well-being. In response, Jaemin queried whether his father was startled due to his earlier jest aimed at easing the tension. Jaemin then reminded his father of the need to concentrate on the critical subject at hand. Observing his father's tenacious fight, Jaemin comprehended why he bore the moniker, the Demon King. Ultimately, Jaemin emerged victorious in this battle, securing a necklace as the most coveted item within the dungeon. Meanwhile, as the two engaged in conversation, Jianhun intervened to provide a detailed account of the preceding events. With everyone gearing up for the impending second battle, Jianhun extended an invitation to the pair. Jaemin's father glanced at his wife and concurred. Seizing an opportune moment when Jianhun's attention waned, Jaemin suddenly thrust a sword into him. This unexpected act caught Jianhun off guard, prompting him to question its significance. Jaemin retorted by asking whether Jianhun believed he could persist in his actions with a tarnished heart, as he appeared to be invoking destruction by sacrificing the trapped guardians. Fueled by anger, Jaemin raised his voice, denouncing the ensuing suffering that had befallen those within the walls, who were now driven to madness, oblivious to the events that had transpired. Subsequently, Jaemin retrieved his sword, declaring an end to the despicable plan. He admitted that he had avenged his parents, but he could not change the course of reality. In a fit of rage, he lay prone on the ground, asserting himself as the harbinger of destruction, decrying any interference with his grand design. Jaemin's father stepped in to pacify him, recognizing the inherent compassion of his wife in such situations. Though it was now Jaemin in her body, his father was bewildered by the inexplicable turn of events. Raising his sword, he approached Jaemin, convinced that he had a valid reason for doing so, even though it was primarily an excuse. Jianhun's cryptic statement underscored the insignificance of innocent lives lost to greed, prompting Jaemin to reflect on the consequences of his actions. He recognized that the protection guard's skill had been forfeited due to Jianhun's death, with repercussions yet to unfold. In an unexpected twist, Jaemin suddenly experienced dizziness, and the world around him began to shift. He found himself back in his own body, inside a reversed dungeon. Observing him was the constellation War God, embodied by Sung Young Suk, who sought to understand Jaemin's motives for transmigration. To avoid retribution, Jaemin needed to provide a plausible explanation or face consequences. Jaemin justified his presence as an attempt to prevent the death of his beloved agent. Eventually, his curiosity led him to explore an alternate outcome, piquing the constellation's interest. In exchange, he offered Jaemin the War Eye as a gift, a power achieved through years of practice, vital for maximizing combat effectiveness. Although Jaemin felt elated, he questioned the reason for this generosity. The constellation's rationale was rooted in Jaemin's rescue of its cherished representative, emphasizing the shared world in which they existed. The constellation desired Jaemin to continue living in alignment with his beloved representative's will. In return, he requested Jaemin to ensure that Sung Yun Suk's death held significance. Expressing gratitude to the old man, Jaemin hoped for continued protection of his constellation upon returning to his world. Jaemin regained consciousness within his mother's body, greeted by the concerned countenance of his father. They were inside a shelter, surrounded by survivors who had valiantly defended against adversaries while Jaemin was unconscious. Though Jaemin believed he had saved these people, he acknowledged that the past had been irrevocably altered. Observing a younger version of himself running to embrace his father, Enthusiastically engaging in conversation, Jaemin stood beside his former self, witnessing his younger aspirations. The boy expressed unwavering belief in his mother's capabilities, vowing to grow into a formidable player like his parents. A loud noise signaled the commencement of the final session of the apocalypse. Jaemin, addressing himself as the voice of the god of destruction, prepared for the impending battle. His father joined him, and others present expressed their desire to accompany them despite their injuries. Jaemin appreciated their support, but encouraged them to prioritize the care of the wounded, understanding the need for defenders of their sanctuary. A young Jaemin implored his mother not to leave, invoking her promise to bake cakes and provide numerous airplane toys upon her return. Though the request seemed unusual coming from his own lips, Jaemin asked his father to remember these words. As they departed, their fellow survivors expressed trust in their abilities and vowed to safeguard their sanctuary. Jaemin harbored thoughts of confronting the individual responsible for his parents' deaths, the Destroyer. His father inquired about their plan, to which Jaemin responded that they lacked one, but believed they held the upper hand as the ritual had not been completed. Jaemin requested his father's assistance in attacking the faraway gate undergoing transformation in the air. After his father delivered a potent blow, Jaemin took charge, anticipating the arrival of the Destroyer. The imposing figure of the Destroyer materialized, taunting the pair as insignificant earth creatures daring to challenge the god of war. The constellation next to Jaemin cautioned against succumbing to anger, but Jaemin assured him of his newfound calmness. Jaemin addressed the monster, dismissing it as a mere product of the failed ritual, and engaged in a fierce battle. He ultimately transformed the menacing figure into an infant. Despite the childlike appearance, Jaemin remained resolute, asserting that the Destroyer held no qualifications. He may have been younger, but his actions had deprived Jaemin of his family. The system confirmed Jaemin's success in saving the world, albeit through an unconventional method. It promised a reward upon his return to reality. The god of war inquired about Jaemin's emotions and relief, to which Jaemin responded with a resounding affirmative. As his father regained his composure and sought clarification, Jaemin conveyed their success with a smile. Having prevented a world-threatening crisis, Jaemin's father's mastery of the lightning sword skill proved indispensable. A gathering ensued to honor player Sung Yun-suk for single-handedly saving the world, with everyone exuding immense joy and excitement. Observing this scene, Jaemin couldn't help but ponder how remarkable it would be if such events unfolded in reality. The constellation mentioned that in this place, he could perceive the past, present, and future. His discerning gaze could distinguish truth from falsehood, confirming the authenticity of the setting. Jaemin grasped that for them, at this moment it was real, and the system announced Jaemin's impending return to reality in 10 seconds. The constellation war god bid him farewell, expressing deep gratitude for safeguarding his agent. In his final moments within this realm, Jaemin rushed to embrace his father, conveying that he held him in the highest regard. In an instant, Jaemin returned to the real world, marked by a newfound sense of heroism, and his connection with the constellation was reinforced. Reflecting on the array of rewards he had acquired during this journey, Jaemin's initial motivation for challenging the dungeon in the opposite direction was rooted in obtaining the spirit nucleus. Surveying the remaining rewards, he pondered whether to accept them or not. Doing so would enable him to channel some of his mother's power, but he doubted the core spirit's utility in saving Seong-su's mother. Concerning the remaining items, Jaemin had enlisted the assistance of 2 actors the previous day in locating them all. He hadn't anticipated their swift success. Sung Yun-suk expressed satisfaction and remarked that the 2 were competent. Modestly, they acknowledged that they weren't complete strangers. To express gratitude, Jaemin agreed to treat them to drinks. He then retrieved the medicine bottle, intending to find Seong-su. To his surprise, when Jaemin arrived at work, he was met with an astounded Seong-su. Seong-su, noting his own current boredom, had come to share some happiness. Placing the medicine bottle on the table, Jaemin emphasized the importance of secrecy, as divulging its contents could lead to trouble. Perceiving Seong-su's confusion, Jaemin revealed that the medicine could cure his mother's ailment. This revelation prompted Seong-su to ask Jaemin how he knew about his mother's condition, but the question was shelved for now. The potion in his possession held the potential to remedy mana addiction. Jaemin reassured Seong-su, assuring him of the drug's rarity and its lack of adverse effects. While Seong-soo's harbored faith in Jaemin's trustworthiness, he remained hesitant, primarily due to concerns about the potion's unknown origin. Jaemin recounted the arduous effort it took to acquire it from the dungeon. Seong-soo, however, had become preoccupied with a phone call from the hospital, where his mother's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Jaemin seized the opportunity, and after a brief exchange with the doctor, handed over the vial once more, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. The impending danger facing Jaemin's parents during his childhood had rendered him powerless. Now Seong-soo had the chance to make a difference, and Jaemin encouraged him not to squander it. Approaching the hospital bed, Jaemin pointed out that, at the very least, he should take action. As Seong-soo's mother stirred from her slumber, Jaemin's favorability rating surged unexpectedly. His current popularity exceeded 7,000. Seong-soo relayed the system's revelation that the development skill had been unlocked. Excitedly, Jaemin implored Seong-soo to activate the skill on him. Guiding him through the process, Jaemin became the first person to wield this newfound ability, experiencing an invigorating surge of strength. The sensation paralleled his prior experience when he inhabited his mother's body. The second awakening notification signaled the successful completion of the system, leaving Sung Yun-suk in awe of her son's expression. Unlike other players, he was now free from level and experience constraints. With this ability, Jaemin could accurately assess his progress, becoming potentially stronger than anyone else. He shared with Seong-soo that this increased level allowed him limitless growth, thanks to Seong-soo's involvement. Seong-soo remained somewhat skeptical, prompting Jaemin to emphasize that the development skill could augment the strength of other players, shattering their limitations. Despite Seong-soo's initial reluctance to believe, Jaemin's enthusiasm persisted. He regarded this skill as more valuable than anything else. As the two settled down, Jaemin detected Seong-soo's unease, especially regarding his mother's concerns about Jaemin's participation as a player. Jaemin advised Seong-soo to consider the matter carefully. Privately, he mused that his current favorability rating exceeded 7,000, making rejection unlikely. Seong-soo expressed gratitude and pledged to reach a decision soon. After bidding farewell to Seong-soo, Jaemin ventured into the dungeon. In a brief encounter with monsters, his level and item count skyrocketed. He marveled at this unusual progression. Hunting only a few monsters appeared sufficient to trigger substantial growth. Sung Yun-suk gazed at her son with pride, informing him that there was no time limit. Jaemin resolved to persevere, but he couldn't help but notice the dungeon's resemblance to the location where he discovered Pandora's box. Voicing his concern to his mother, Jaemin pondered the risks of becoming lost within. In response, Sung Yun-suk equipped him with an item, a mini-map that displayed his current location, including monsters, bosses, and teammates. The mention of teammates took Jaemin by surprise. He had initially believed himself to be alone. Suddenly, a distressed individual emerged from within the dungeon, urgently seeking assistance. As Jaemin approached, he inquired if Jaemin was dispatched by the kingdom to rescue him, mentioning his astonishment at Jaemin's extraordinary magical prowess. Puzzled by this claim, Jaemin glanced at his sword, now with a soul core. He chided the stranger for being too noisy, subsequently subduing him in an attempt to acquire the soul core. However, Jaemin soon realized that he couldn't obtain it since he wasn't the rightful owner. When the stranger eventually regained consciousness, he remained bewildered. Regarding the reason for his fainting, he had to swiftly defeat the Centipede King. When the topic of the Centipede King arose, Jaemin instantly devised a strategy for confronting it. The one who did not benefit from the situation was Jaemin. Under Jaemin's guidance, the two promptly located the king's centipedes. Jaemin instructed him to quickly escape, diverting the king's attention and buying time. Jaemin observed the massive centipede and contemplated how to eliminate it. At this moment, the system announced the activation of the initial magic eye feature, providing valuable information about the centipede. Out of the blue, Sung Yun-suk inquired about the origin of his cheating skill. After he disclosed everything, she became incredibly envious, lamenting that the old man hadn't bestowed her with one. Finally, owing to this skill, Jaemin pinpointed the King Centipede's core. He unlocked Pandora's box and retrieved the most potent weapon to breach the monster's armor. Unfortunately, the armor proved more resilient than anticipated, causing his mace to be flung aside. Jaemin clicked his tongue and resorted to relying solely on his fists. The Centipede King was ultimately vanquished, causing Jaemin's skills to steadily improve. Subsequently, another man turned and angrily accused him of recklessly using a warrior as bait. Jaemin nonchalantly used his finger to gently push the accuser against the wall. Recognizing the urgency of acquiring the item before the dungeon's closure, Jaemin learned from the system's announcement that he had been poisoned by the centipede, with his health deteriorating. In the hospital, Tae-ho sat by his bedside, seething with anger. He pondered when Jaemin would call. And while relieved that he did, his mood soured when Jaemin revealed he was injured. Tae-ho's response was filled with indignation, questioning whether Jaemin was acting as a personal chauffeur. Gazing at Jaemin in the hospital bed, he recognized his genius and contemplated whether this child could surpass his own parents. Upon Jaemin's awakening, Sung Yun-suk noted that he had slept for a lengthy 10 hours, an unexpected duration that left him feeling significantly improved. She confessed that she almost vomited due to Tae-ho's comments. She recounted his declaration that he was the world's needed individual. Jaemin noticed an enhancement in his mana, possibly attributed to the soul core, coupled with an increase in wisdom. However, the system displayed a level cap, which could only be unlocked upon progressing to Stage 2. Jaemin expressed frustration, demanding that the system provide instructions for unlocking Stage 2 before imposing limitations. He reclined on the bed, vowing to find alternative means of enhancing his abilities. For the time being, Jaemin decided to take a stroll, but Tae-ho's assistant persistently shadowed him, as per her instructions. When Jaemin paused before a dimly lit building, the assistant intervened, insisting it was too perilous to enter. Jaemin countered, assuring her that the place appeared harmless, and urged her to support him rather than obstructing his path. Se-yeon, though apprehensive, obediently followed him, eventually grasping his shirt and expressing her discomfort in the darkness. Jaemin halted at a certain point, recalling his ability to summon by channeling mana inside the system, thereby opening a spatial portal to another location. Another individual materialized, prompting Se-yeon to pull him behind her protectively. Jaemin privately commended her as a kind-hearted person, as he had come with the intention of delivering Curry's soul to that individual in exchange for the king's soul mark, thus fulfilling his 2-year plan for the infectious disease. Emerging from the building, Jaemin encountered a nearby skirmish. The participants struggled due to the monster's sparks, preventing close combat engagement. The captain instructed everyone to maintain distance and attack from afar, yet their efforts proved futile. Faced with this, he ordered a retreat. Jaemin, however, was the sole individual who returned to confront the monsters. This prompted the other captain to express surprise, cautioning him against such a perilous endeavor. Curiously, Jaemin remained unharmed by the electrifying sparks. Currently, King's Choice was active on his body, further mystifying the onlookers as he used his bare hands to defeat the first monster. Jaemin anticipated that the current Garog event would not be as challenging as the previous one. He found the electric shocks to be surprisingly intriguing, akin to a form of physical therapy. Suddenly, the system issued an urgent task requiring him to eliminate 100 golems to unlock the second stage. To protect themselves from Jaemin's potential attacks, everyone learned to shield their heads with their hands. Growing impatient, Sung Yun-suk asked if Jaemin was reserving his stealth skills for later use. In response, Jaemin heeded his mother's advice, using his stealth abilities to effortlessly complete the mission. Glancing back at the crowd, Sung Yun-suk beamed with pride, while other players implored Jaemin to join them for swift treatment. As they conversed, some of the remaining individuals experienced severe bouts of vomiting blood. Jaemin promptly recognized that someone was employing the skill. Reactivating King's Pick, he directed his attack in a particular direction. The individual who subsequently appeared turned out to be the fallen priest, the instigator of the Gugogu incident. After his mother's recovery, Seong-su frequently visited the hospital to inquire about her condition. She reported feeling completely at ease now and attributed her rejuvenation to Jaemin's medicine. Grateful, she suggested her son should at least be treated to a meal as a token of gratitude. Seong-su agreed to extend an invitation, and the two fell into a contemplative silence. Meanwhile, the TV news reported a riot in the Gorogu district, but fortunately, a player had intervened to resolve the situation. Although relieved, Jaemin bore the responsibility of quelling such a violent incident single-handedly. Jaemin, observing the priest's capture, remarked that the priest should have fled. He attempted to activate his magic eye to analyze the situation, perplexed by its unresponsiveness. He ridiculed the magic's failure to reveal his opponent's characteristics, and noted that the magic circle he employed was impervious to all effects. Regarding Jaemin's combat efforts, he commented on the improper behavior of humans on Earth, and revealed that he had come to investigate a unique energy source, but found the whole experience disappointing. Observing Jaemin's smile, he inquired about the reason behind it. With a smile, Jaemin continued to chat and laugh because he was about to partake in something exciting. He decided to open Pandora's box despite his reluctance, acknowledging that valuable items were also a form of talent. To his surprise, he pulled out a hefty sword. It looked impressive, but how could he use it against a deranged individual hurling lightning bolts? Sung Yun-suk, his mom, instructed him to press the red button above the sword, revealing its transformation into numerous flying swords. Jaemin used these to defeat the menacing bishop. Nearby, Gwang Hyun stood atop a building, observing Jaemin. On the phone, someone informed them that while Jaemin wasn't on Korea's ranking list, he possessed the abilities of an A-level player, such as acumen, strength, flexibility, and endurance. Impressed, Jaemin asked his mother to push him forward. Sung Yun-suk was highly impressed by his combat skills. The monster stated that nothing would affect it now. In that moment, Jaemin was filled with determination to defeat the monster, and those around him fell silent, as though the recent events were a dream. Everyone below was elated because Jaemin successfully vanquished the monster, but the person above remained apprehensive. Jaemin fell freely and asked his mother if she could save him quickly, since they lacked funds to purchase more items. Fortunately, Gwang Hyeon, Choi Gwang-hyun, one of Korea's 5 S-ranked players and the solver of the Gorogu incident in a previous life, came to Jaemin's rescue. Surprised that Jaemin recognized him, Gwang Hyun praised the brave young man. Jaemin, who was known for being discerning, couldn't believe the praise. Upon learning that Jaemin was only a B-level player, Gwang Hyun shouted, remarking on the extraordinary nature of this world. He promptly recommended Jaemin to become an S-level player. The unfolding events were broadcast live, and Se-young-soo shared the truth with his mother. Jaemin sought Se-young-soo's assistance. Shortly after, Jaemin received a call from Se-young-soo, who informed him that his mother had granted permission. She expressed happiness and eagerness to meet Jaemin. Following the call, Jaemin went outside, where a crowd had gathered. He made arrangements with Se-young-soo over the phone, avoiding the enthusiastic onlookers. As Jaemin arrived at his meeting spot with Tae-ho, he breathed a sigh of relief, considering the earlier danger he had faced. Tae-ho questioned why he had taken so long. After the paperwork was completed, Jaemin couldn't believe that he had acquired S-level status without an evaluation. Tae-ho congratulated him, and Jaemin hoped his parents would be thrilled with the news. Jaemin gazed at his mother beside him, feeling a surge of happiness. To his surprise, his uncle didn't object to his decision to become a player, even though he had initially expected resistance. It was impossible to control someone who didn't wish to conceal their strength or talents. Leaving Tae-ho's residence, Jaemin visited the house he had just acquired. Sung Yun-suk was delighted with the comfortable space. That evening, he hosted a housewarming party, introducing Se-young-soo to everyone in the guild. The following morning, Jaemin led Se-young-soo to the guild as promised, officially becoming a guild member. However, when they entered, the family atmosphere they had expected had vanished. Ji-won accused them of attempting to steal Jaemin from their guild, tearing up the invitation. He questioned whether they thought Jaemin would leave just for the money, adding that the 50 billion won was a mere down payment to be paid by the Black Guild soon. As Jaemin sat beside Ji-won, he couldn't help but notice the familiar, joyful nature his adoptive father possessed. Ji-won asked if Jaemin intended to waste his talents in this lowly guild, to which Jaemin responded by expressing his preference to join the Ji-won guild. He elaborated on the dubious history of S-ranked player Okurin, the guild master, who had amassed wealth through illicit means and lost his humanity in the process. Jaemin smiled and mentioned that he would leave once Ji-won finished speaking, as their guild seemed quite busy welcoming a new member. Intrigued, Ji-won asked whether Jaemin thought he would leave so easily, hinting at potential troublemaking if an S-ranked player joined their ranks. The boisterous party attracted 2 more players. Realizing that Jaemin's enemies were about to confront his allies, Jaemin provocatively dared them to take action. Stepping forward, He challenged their assumption that the Black Tigers knew his weaknesses, pointing out that he had chosen the Black Tigers himself. He warned that they'd become his enemies if they caused trouble there again. Before long, a blue gate appeared, ranked among the 3 most perilous prison gates. Both the Mad Dogs and the Black Tigers were selected to enter. Upon realizing that Jaemin wasn't among the others, some presumed he wouldn't be a factor and continued hurling insults. The climax arrived upon entering the gate, where a girl named Ji Young accepted Tae-sik's request to eliminate the Black Tiger team. Jaemin abandoned his stealth approach and directly engaged in combat. Tae-sik issued orders to attack and eliminate everyone, even though Jaemin had already attacked. Some group members pointed out Jaemin's S-rank status, but were silenced. They believed that by overwhelming him with numbers, they could prevail. Jaemin overheard their discussion and inquired about the source of the information, emphasizing that he was not alone. The Black Tigers advanced, and their captain cautioned against underestimating their opponents, referring to them as such bastards. As Tae-sik surveyed the chaotic scene, he cursed silently, wondering how his group of well-armed fighters was losing to a band of seemingly reckless individuals. Jaemin, smiling, credited Seong-soo for their success. Despite the odds, he was ready to lend a helping hand when needed. Jaemin harbored malevolent intentions, which seemed to sap the resolve of those present, particularly when they witnessed Tae-sik's shocked expression. He remarked that, when he planned to come here to harm others, he should have been prepared to face danger himself. 10 minutes had elapsed, when Sung Yun-suk reminded him it was time to wake up. Jaemin swiftly instructed the people around him to disperse, leaving the rest in a state of confusion. They all sprinted simultaneously, with Jaemin conveniently positioning himself next to girl Ji-yun to escort her to safety. She gazed at him, perplexed, to which Jaemin simply stated that he was saving her life. The system immediately announced the Iron Warrior's detection of a disturbance, filling it with rage. Jaemin observed the group of people below engaged in battle and identified it as a boss-class monster, the forest's master. It was the reason why no other monsters roamed this forest. The individuals below realized they were trapped and had no escape. Just as Jaemin became intrigued by the armored entity, contemplating a confrontation, Jaemin's single strike caused the monster to rise once more. He wondered if it could truly be defeated in this situation. The system indicated that the armored warrior had regenerated its damage. Jaemin didn't anticipate his words becoming reality, but his own arm remained unhealed. He realized a problem. Injuries from the light ether couldn't be healed. In that case, he decided on a straightforward approach. What was once just a punch before became a home run this time. Jaemin emerged victorious over the armored warrior. His level continued to increase, and the boundary gradually faded away. Jaemin looked at it in bewilderment, pondering how it could move on its own after being defeated. He murmured that its name was remarkably fitting. Necklace reacted as it neared Jaemin. Upon reaching a certain distance, it was once again drawn inside the necklace. Jaemin commented that it was merely a collection of moving iron. Currently, Pandora's box was absorbing bodies using the growth gluttony skill. Jaemin observed the Mad Dog gang being dispatched, noting their considerable wealth as all their equipment was level B or higher. Because Pandora's box required more power, it temporarily halted its consumption of these items. Jaemin was exceedingly curious about the evolution process, progressing from rage to growth gluttony, and wondered what would come next. He immediately employed it to explore the Mad Dog captain's memories, expecting to find valuable information. To his surprise, he stumbled upon the Disaster Egg, one of the 4 voodoo cult items set to appear in the next 2 years, an item of great significance to the cult. Sung Yun-suk inquired how he had obtained such a menacing item, but Jaemin remained unaware due to the constant battles in the area. When Jaemin caught up with those who had left earlier, they couldn't help but tease him, joking that he must be the main character, given his late arrival. Nevertheless, it was apparent that things were nearly wrapped up. Jaemin quipped, "How much farther is it? It took me 2 hours to get here." Employing explosive ether, Jaemin dispatched monsters along the way. An ice elf monster indignantly inquired how he dared to attack her, admiring his audacity in striking her real body, but warning that he wouldn't be as fortunate next time. He smiled and told her that her trick was quite cute and encouraged her to try it again. Once more, his body exploded, and the ice fairy lamented his prowess. Jaemin used a bow and arrow, to inform the ice fairy that her icy facade could be shattered. She retorted by asking if he thought she would allow him to kill her so easily, conjuring a powerful gust of wind that sent everyone present flying. Jamin struggled to resist the wind's force with his strength, acknowledging her boss-like brutality. Sung Yun-suk explained to his son that such events were commonplace in high-level gates. Jamin admitted to his mother, "But this is too scary." As soon as he spoke, he heard Seongsu's cry for help. He momentarily glanced at him and promptly used his sword to attack. Furious, Jamin demanded to know why Seongsu dared to lie to him. He had been discovered, so there was no need for pretense. All the journalists had congregated in front of the gate, eagerly awaiting the player's emergence, never expecting that this time, a new time record would be set. Jamin was the last to emerge, proudly displaying the Ice Fairy's core, proclaiming that he was the one who had defeated it. Mad Dog's assistant anxiously monitored the news when his comrades failed to appear, fearing Chirin's wrath if they had indeed perished. Tae-sik finally exited the gate, relieved to find survivors. After leaving the gate, Tae-sik approached the journalists and confessed that the Mad Dogs had attempted to assassinate Black Tiger within the gate, but they were countered by Jamin, resulting in the demise of all his comrades.